The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
Radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe it.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand.
Same. Every time I hear that, I get chills and I just well up. Because I know he knew he was going to be killed. I just know, that's why he says, I may not get there with you now. So what was he doing there and where was he? Dr. Martin Luther King was in Memphis. And why was he in Memphis that day? Because on February 1st, 1968, there was a wiener barrel, which was an old garbage sanitation truck, a garbage truck in Memphis, and these two guys were in the garbage bin trying to stay out of the rain, riding along in this garbage truck. Their names were Ethel Cole and Robert Walker, and they were just trying to stay out of the rain, and because they were in the garbage bin, they were covered, but then you had a packing ram, that thing that comes down and crushes the garbage. It came down and crushed them because the city of Memphis, under this segregationist mayor named Henry Loeb, was practicing fiscal austerity. A lot of this is going to sound very familiar and current to you, although it's 1968 we are talking about here. And he had continued to use these outdated pieces of equipment in the Public Works Department, even though this garbage truck should have been junked. Now, why did he do that? Because the 1,300 sanitation workers were African Americans. And he didn't give a rat's ass about their safety. And he paid the minimum wage of $1.60 per hour. But they had to work until the route was done. And sometimes they would put in 60 hours a week. There was no overtime. So they got paid for 40, even though they were working 60. And some of these people in Memphis, most of the sanitation workers in Memphis at that time, were so poor that they would draw welfare while they worked these 60-hour work weeks. They had no showers. They had no sanitary facilities. They had no access to upward mobility, meaning supervisory jobs. They had no rights on the job. Then they got zero respect. And when Cole and Walker were crushed by this faulty garbage truck, they were only in their 30s. And they had left their wives and children behind with no source of income. So the head of the union down there, T.O. Jones, tried to organize the workers in the union to change the conditions. But the mayor, the segregationist Mayor Loeb, refused to even talk to them. He wouldn't bargain with them. He wouldn't even deduct the union dues from their paychecks so that they could, support the union. And so just like today, Loeb was a pro-business Republican. And he sought to block the public employees' unions and was trying secretly to destroy them in the private sector as well as the public sector. Sanitation workers were public workers. So working people who had no means to advance their interest were left without anybody to organize them. Now, this is 1968, and I just want you to know that in Memphis, in Tennessee, in the South, the industrial unions, called the Congress of Industrial Organizations, or the CIO part of the AFL-CIO, and black workers had overcome in Memphis Jim Crow laws. They got better jobs. They got some better wage classifications in the private sector through unions. But the CIO had really stopped being effective about 1955. And so the CIO was unable to collect the union dues from the public workers. And so they started this long decline, and the living standards for the public workers stagnated and declined. And so in 1968, the sanitation workers were part of the vast working poor in the South. They were doing full-time work, but they were only paid part-time wages. And the public employee union was the only means they had to resolve, their plight, because they had no political power whatsoever in 1968. And that's why Dr. King was in Memphis. Because after a couple days after the death of Eckel Cole and Robert Walker, the public works supervisors added insult to injury. They sent the sewer and drain workers home with no pay during a rainstorm, but the white supervisors stayed at work and they got full pay, but they had very little to do because, it was raining. And so they had a Sunday night meeting to air their grievances, and the sanitation workers went on strike on February 12th, which was Lincoln's birthday. The local leader of Local 1733 of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Workers, you know them as AFSCME now, didn't ask approval from the national office because they knew the national office wouldn't approve it and that they would just replace the strikers. And the mayor in Memphis responded by threatening exactly that. He said, if you walk out, we'll replace you permanently. And so during the next 6 weeks, there was a lot of unrest in Memphis. The police were attacking the workers. They were attacking their supporters. They were pulling out the clubs and the mace, and it happened more than once. And then the strike became this huge battle over whether or not you could join a union at all, and over the dignity and the self-respect that the black workers who were working 60 hours a week and taking home $1.60 for a 40-hour work week, and so the black community in the city, 40% of the population of Memphis at that time, about 500,000 people, they saw the violent response by the mayor and the police department. And so they recognized that this was, the plantation mentality of white racism, and that they had endured enough down there, and that the history of slavery and segregation and the Jim Crow laws, and so they started putting up these signs all around Memphis that said, I am a man. And everybody knew exactly what they were talking about down there, especially the black church clergy. So you had Reverend James Lawson and Henry Starks and other black ministers opening up their churches. They had nightly rallies. Maxine Smith and Samuel Kiles and others who you probably never heard of, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, they bonded together with AFSCME, and they organized mass picket lines and mass demonstrations to confront this Mayor Loeb, this segregationist, and the white women especially joined the African-American women, and they boycotted all the merchants downtown Memphis. And the Memphis Labor Council passed a resolution, and they helped the demonstrations, by giving their support. You had the United Rubber Workers Union. They opened up their halls for daily meetings. You had black students walk out of schools in a show of support for these demonstrations. You had a group called the Invaders, who were black advocates. They threatened to escalate, to incendiary tactics, to violent tactics. And this is why Martin Luther King got involved. They had marches 2 times a day. They had church rallies every night. Why am I telling you all this? Because these are the things that work. This is the kind of commitment that works. So they had twice daily marches. They had evening church rallies. They had continual picket lines. And even though the strikers themselves, the workers themselves, were all men, the women from both the black and white communities, through their churches, their community organizations, committed their time to make food. They donated clothing. They gave shelter to the striking families. And they started this consumer boycott of the downtown merchants, which destroyed business for the white merchants in downtown Memphis. It was the first true mass movement. It was the best example of when you get labor and the church and the civil rights organizations and students and housewives and stay at home and everybody all together with one single purpose. The media in Memphis completely distorted the facts, completely distorted it, because it was a white-dominated Southern media, and they refused to tell the side of the unions, and they refused to tell the side of the workers, and they refused to tell the side of the white women who were bonding with the black women and how they were supporting these striking families. And so you had a couple of civil rights leaders that went to the media, Roy Wilkins and Bayard Rustin. They came to speak to the media because they wanted national attention. They wanted to tell people outside of Memphis what was going on. But there was no national attention for this until March 18th. And that's the little snippet of the speech that Dr. Martin Luther King gave at the Charles Mason Temple. It was one of the largest indoor mass gatherings in the South during the civil rights era. And he went on to say all labor has dignity. He included Memphis in the Poor People's Campaign to take hard-working African-American men and women into the nation's capital to demand that Congress shift its war on spending to take care of jobs and housing and education and health care and other human needs of families that were, devastated by the lack of pay because they wouldn't even let them collect union dues. So if you're wondering why the unions have disappeared, thank a Republican. This was the kind of organization that was possible with unions, churches, civil rights leaders, and men and women of good faith.
Clear for takeoff. The Randi Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandiRhodes.com.
Hello, Progressive Voices tune-in listeners. I'm Casey Hobbs.
And I'm Shane Mason, and we're the hosts of Nurse Talk Radio.
Here's what we're talking about this week.
On the heels of Senate Republicans jamming through a historically unpopular tax bill that enriches their wealthy donors at the American people's expense, the tax giveaway to the wealthy triggered a $400 billion in automatic cuts to Medicare in the next decade. Republicans have already announced their intentions to continue their attack on Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security in 2018.
Shane, that's the really bad news. But the good news is we have President of Social Security Works, Nancy Altman, with us to talk about all of this.
Before we get started, we'd like to play just a short clip of Paul Ryan explaining what he says entitlement reform is.
Sure.
By 2026, according to CBO, roughly all revenues coming to the federal government will be dedicated to interest on the debt, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. And that means everything else is borrowed money. It's a function of the aging of America, health inflation. And so if you do not tackle the drivers of our debt, which are entitlements, you cannot balance the budget in the future and pay down the debt. You cannot tackle the debt crisis that's coming in America if you do not fix this entitlement problem.
It is just outrageous.
It is.
This from a man who just pushed through $1.5 trillion in additional deficit to give tax breaks to the very wealthiest and the largest corporations. The truth is, this is just an old talking point of the Republicans. The truth is that Social Security does not add a penny to the deficit. It is totally self-financed. It has no borrowing authority. Medicare and Medicaid are much more cost-effective than private health insurance, even though Medicare covers the most expensive parts of our population, seniors and people with disabilities, people who have the highest medical costs. It has the lowest per capita administrative costs. Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security are not the issues. We should be expanding Medicare so it's Medicare for all. If we had the same per capita cost, healthcare cost of any other country in the world, anyone, we would have surpluses in the future. So the problems, they like to demonize Social Security as well as Medicare and Medicaid, but those programs are solutions. They are not problems.
The word entitlement is so wrong. We pay into that.
It's so outrageous. These are earned benefits. We are being sold a bill of goods. We are the wealthiest country in the world, and if we want an expanded Social Security and expanded Medicare, it means holding our politicians' feet to the fire, ask them if they're willing to expand these programs or not, and vote for people who will expand them.
Check out our show at nursetalksite.com and listen every Saturday and Sunday right here on Progressive Voices.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, The Randi Rhodes Show.
14,000 apartments in 39 different buildings, all mostly white tenants. That is until the Department of Justice took notice in 1973 and slammed Donald Trump and his father Fred Trump with a lawsuit. Trump management was charged with discriminating against African Americans and breaking federal law. Donald Trump, then just 27, was president of the company. The Department of Justice accused the Trumps of violating the Fair Housing Act, arguing they were turning away renters based on race and color. Who tipped them off? Local activists, so-called testers, posing as potential renters at Trump's buildings, mainly in Brooklyn and Queens. Elise Goldweber was a lawyer for the DOJ's Fair Housing section at the time and was called on to handle the Trump case.
When the black testers came, they were shown, they may have been shown apartments, but were told nothing was available. Whereas when the white testers came, yes, there were things that were available. That would be the norm.
And if the Trumps did rent to a black person, Goldweber recalls, they would do so only at one building in Brooklyn, reserving the other buildings for white tenants.
That the white people would live in Trump Village and the people of color would live in Flatbush.
And according to the Justice Department, they even had a secret coding system to do it, a racial code. Here's how.
Some of the applications were marked with a C, which we learned that it meant colored, so that the prospective tenants who had come in were noted to be colored.
Yes, you heard her right. The Department of Justice alleged applications submitted by prospective African American renters were designated with a secret code, such as C for colored, to indicate a black person was looking to rent. In true Trump fashion, Donald Trump hit back, calling the government's accusations absolutely ridiculous, and telling the court, "I have never, nor has anyone in my organization ever, to the best of my knowledge, discriminated or shown bias in the renting of our apartments."
And that was the beginning of Donald Trump saying, "I am the least racist person that you know." And this was 5 years after Dr. King was killed. This was just 5 years later. I mean, 1968 was a brutal year. It was a brutal year. We lost Martin Luther King Jr. We lost Robert Kennedy. It was a mind-blowing, mind-bending year in the effort to move civil rights forward. And here's Donald Trump 5 years later getting caught for the first time practicing discrimination, segregation in his buildings. And it marked the very first time that Donald Trump said, "I am the least racist person you know." And it's just, this is the era in which Donald Trump was a young businessman. I mean, he was almost 30 years old. He knew better. His father had taught him how to segregate, people to Flatbush versus people to Queens. I mean, and this was all going on while the civil rights movement was in full swing. So, I got to tell you, this is the most ironic MLK Day in the history of MLK days, because not only does Martin Luther King's legacy ring hollow in Trump's ears, but also it's never been more important to know how to organize, how Martin Luther King organized, how the unions played such a huge part in the organization, why he was in Memphis, what we were fighting for, why white women decided to join with black women, why the middle class was being shattered, and why we haven't seen wages increase ever since we shattered all the unions, okay, and created all these right-to-work states, which was a goal of the conservative Republican Party after the Civil Rights Acts got passed ever since, because they understood the power of organizing working people and clergy and housewives and activists all together under one roof. I mean, what can I tell you? This is why Scott Walker in 2010, he had to destroy the public unions and remove them as an ally of then President Barack Obama. This is why Scott Walker did what Scott Walker did. I mean, here we were trying to organize not just garbage workers, but then we started organizing all public sector, hospital workers, service workers, all across the South. It was an amazing movement. All this was for a struggle for decent wages and freedom. And here we are in the 21st century with a president who consistently has to come forward and say, I'm the least racist person you know, to take us back to the bad old days when the FBI literally wiretapped everybody that organized to bring freedom and equality to large swaths of the South and even in the North. That's why you had testers going into his apartments, because people got very hip to how to organize themselves to figure out who was discriminating and who wasn't. That you had white women joining black women. So the black women would go and try to rent an apartment in a Trump building, a Fred Trump building, and the white women would be shown an apartment. A black woman would go and her application was marked with the letter C, and either she was told there's no room at the inn or she'd be shown a place in Flatbush, Brooklyn, which is pretty much where I was born and raised. So, I mean, let me tell you something. I love Martin Luther King Day. I do. I've never missed an opportunity to play you his speeches or to celebrate him or to talk to you about how the organizing principles that worked for the civil rights movement then can work for the working man's movement now. You want to talk about forgotten men and women? You want to talk about that? Fine, let's talk about it. But let's talk about it with an eye towards what works to get everybody heard, to get everybody to be seen, to get everybody to be taken seriously. Because listen, I'll tell you something. I was reading the letter from the Birmingham jail that Martin Luther King wrote 5 years before the I Have a Dream speech. I've been to the mountaintop. I may not get there with you now because, mine eyes have seen the glory. Meaning he knew that Hoover had targeted him. He understood his life was not going to be long. Longevity was not in the cards for him. He understood it. And he wasn't afraid of any man. He was serving a higher power. And 5 years, 1963 to 8 is 5 years. 5 years before that, he was jailed in Birmingham, Alabama. And he dealt with that issue of now's not a good time, right? It's never a good time. And this is what he wrote. I won't read the whole letter because it would take an hour to read it. But he was in, he was in segregation. He was by himself in a jail cell. And, the white clergy had turned on him in 1963. They got scared that he was going to be effective, that he was speaking right out of the gospel, and that the things that he was preaching were the words of God. It really was a legitimate purpose that he was arguing for. And the white clergy got really scared, and the politicians of the day turned to the white clergy and wanted them to denounce Dr. King, and they did. They put an ad in the Birmingham News, and they put an ad in the newspaper, and they accused Dr. King of being an outside agitator whose demonstrations, although peaceful, they left that part out, were unwise and untimely. And Dr. King got arrested, and he was in jail in solitary, and he had no Bible with him. He had nothing with him, and yet he was still able to quote from memory T.S. Eliot and Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Aquinas and St. Augustine and Martin Luther and Thomas Jefferson. He was able to do that, and so he started writing this letter. And this letter from the Birmingham jail is very famous, but it's very, very long. So I'll just read you the part that has to do with why it wasn't a good time. Why the white clergy was saying, it's not a good time. Right now is not a good time. He wrote this. He said, "We know through painful experience that freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. Frankly, I've yet to engage in a direct action campaign that was, quote, well-timed in the view of those who have not suffered unduly from the disease of segregation. For years now, I've heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never. We must come to see with one of our distinguished jurists that, quote, justice too long delayed is justice denied. We've waited more than 340 years for our constitutional and God-given rights. The nations of Asia and Africa are moving with jet-like speed toward gaining political independence, but we still creep that horse and buggy pace toward gaining a cup of coffee at a lunch counter. Perhaps it's easy for those who have never felt the stinging darts of segregation to say, wait. But when you've seen vicious mobs lynch your mothers and fathers at will and drown your sisters and brothers at whim, when you've seen hate-filled policemen curse, kick, and even kill your black brothers and sisters, when you see the vast majority of your 20 million Negro brothers smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society, when you suddenly find your tongue twisted and your speech stammering as you seek to explain to your 6-year-old daughter why she can't go to the public amusement park that's just been advertised on TV, and see tears welling up in her eyes when she's told that Funtown is closed to colored children. And she sees ominous clouds of inferiority forming in her little mental sky, and see her beginning to distort her personality by developing an unconscious bitterness toward white people. When you have to concoct an answer for a 5-year-old son who's asking, Daddy, why do white people treat colored people so mean? When you take a cross-country drive and find it necessary to sleep night after night in the uncomfortable corners of your automobile because no motel will accept you. When you're humiliated day in and day out by nagging signs reading white and colored. When your first name becomes, he says the N-word, your middle name becomes Boy, however old you are, and your last name becomes John, and your wife and mother are never given the respected title Mrs., when you're harried by day and haunted by night by the fact that you are a Negro living constantly a tiptoe stance, never quite knowing what to expect next, and are plagued with inner fears and outer resentments, when you are forever fighting a degenerating sense of nobodiness, that you will understand why we find it difficult to wait. And I wanted to include this little part here because this little part in this long letter is about white moderates. And it's really important. He said, first, I must confess that over the past few years, I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in this stride towards freedom is not the White Citizens Council or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate who's more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which in the absence of tension precludes the presence of justice, who constantly says, quote, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I can't agree with your methods or direct action. Who paternalistically believes that he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. And so the message here is, what do you do when somebody says these things? What's your reaction to people who speak out like that, who use the N-word, or who talk about, crap nations, or that people, entire populations of unfortunate or poor or hungry or tired nations don't belong here, in the United States, an idea. The United States is an idea, and the idea of the United States is give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. But give me your discards. Give me the people who would come here with nothing but a nickel in their pocket and a great work ethic and the desire to be American, the desire to be free. What do you say when you have people at your dinner table who say those people, or use the N-word, or say that they are less than, or condemn other nations, or who tweet now like the Tammy Lawrence of the world and the Sean Hannitys of the world and the Tucker Carlsons of the world, whose people came here from those crap hole nations 100 years ago when they were crap holes, looking for exactly what everybody came here looking for: opportunity, justice, equal protection under law, a chance to put your nose to the grindstone, to work and work and work 60 hours a week and know that you'll get stiffed at the end of the week, but it's better. It's a better chance. It's a better opportunity. It's a better idea than where they're coming from. I mean, you have to ask yourself why these people who don't come from New York. As a New Yorker, I see people who come from the Midwest. I see people like Tammy Lawrence, who comes from South Dakota, suddenly moved to New York City. Why? Is South Dakota a shithole, Tammy? Is it? No, you came to New York because there's more jobs, there's more opportunity, it's a better chance for you and your blonde bim persona. You could sell it better there. Please, this whole thing is so. But the question for us is, what are we going to do? We have not just people in media, not just an entire channel and websites devoted to this white supremacist uber nationalist, which nationalism isn't an American idea. The idea is America is a nation because of immigrants. And it can never be the other way around, because nobody's from here except Native Americans, who this president has trashed as well. Those Native code talkers, when they came to the White House, the World War II code talkers, he put his hand on one of their shoulders and invoked Pocahontas as a derisive thing, as a slur. He doesn't understand, and if he does, who cares? He's mean.
To speak to Randi, call now, you bastards. 561-270-3844.
Hello.
Randi Rhodes. Air Force.
Smoke 'em if you got 'em. Yes, it's Herky Jerky in 2018. And for 2018, they're starting off with $5 off full packs of delicious beef smokies. Since Herky Jerky started in 1992, Herky Jerky's delicious beef smokies have been one of the most popular items, and for very good reason. The 100% beef meat sticks have just the right amount of snap on the outside and flavor on the inside. They're low cholesterol, high protein, guaranteed fresh, and the perfect snack for any occasion. This month, they're ringing in the new year with a discount of $5 off all full packs of their 3 kinds of smokies: mild, honey, and jalapeno. The full packs are 1.5 pounds. They include 30 long sticks. The discount applies to full packs only, but as always, if you buy any 2 packs of their products, you'll get free shipping. We hope everybody had a fun and safe holiday season, and we look forward to you enjoying Herky Jerky in 2018 with the absolute best and most delicious jerky anywhere in the world. Visit herkyjerky.com now. Again, herkyjerky.com. Enter promo code SMOKY.
So let's see. There's still no female president. You make half of what men make, yet somehow you are still expected to take care of most everything at the home, too. And ladies, you're beautiful. But on a daily basis, you look in the mirror in disgust at how you look. It is time to start a new routine, and I hope that you will listen to my new show, She Persisted, here on the Progressive Voices Network. My name is Melissa Carter. I will be your host, and I have been a media personality for over 20 years. I also came out on the air long before Ellen did, and as a single mom and a kidney transplant recipient, I have been through some shit. Nevertheless, I persisted, and I know you have too. So let's talk about what we've accomplished, and together we can learn to take it from She Persisted to She Thrived. It's She Persisted at 8 a.m. on the East on the Progressive Voices Network and on demand on the Progressive Voices app. I certainly hope you'll join me.
Whether you're listening to me, Mark Levine, each Monday and Wednesday,
or me, Leslie Marshall, each Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday,
you can hear us 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Progressive Voices Network.
Here's a sample of what you'll hear.
Scott and Paul. Scott is president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, the AAM. We're in the new year, and now shouldn't our president and shouldn't Democrats and Republicans be prioritizing and discussing infrastructure?
It's an issue that has always had bipartisan support, so it does bring people together. And it's something that the president talked about for a very long time, and I am not holding my breath that this Congress and president will be able to come to some agreement and will aggressively push an infrastructure plan that America needs and could benefit from. And I think that that's a shame.
Again, that's Mark Levine every Monday and Wednesday.
And Leslie Marshall each Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday.
3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Progressive Voices Network.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
What did the president say? What did you hear him say?
He said many things. It went on for probably half an hour. The most outrageous comment, obviously, is in reference to countries overseas that might send immigrants to the United States, and the president used the vulgar term, which has been repeated over and over again. But it was a long, far-ranging meeting about immigration in general. Negative things were said about Haitians coming to the United States. The president was talking, and I think this is a tell, if you will. We need more people from Norway, he said. Norway, they don't even take refugees in Norway, he said. And I just met with the Norwegian Prime Minister. We need more Europeans. It was pretty clear to me what the president's message was in that meeting.
And just to clear it up, when he said S-hole countries, he was referring to Africa?
Yes.
Now, Senators Cotton and Perdue have challenged the notion that he said S-hole. And I believe there's some reporting out there that White House officials say that Perdue and Cotton think that he said S-house countries as opposed to S-hole countries.
Let me say they're wrong. I could tell you explicitly they are wrong. And let me also say, is that their defense? That S-house is acceptable, S-hole he would never say? Come on. To think that the President of the United States would refer to any country on earth as an S-house country, for goodness sakes, what does that say?
Really? I mean, honest to God. So now this is where we're at. We've got Cotton and Perdue saying this is absolutely, they were on the Sunday show saying, Durbin is such a liar. He's such a liar. He mischaracterized everything. And now they're settling on he's wrong because it wasn't whole, it was house. Dude. What's wrong with you people? What's wrong with you? But here's the actual testimony today. All right, so here's what happened. Well, a lot of happened. I mean, there's so much news. It's almost like I'm exhausted, is what it is. I truly am exhausted. This is the most exhausting president, and we've lived through W. And he was pretty exhausting. He was spying on people, declaring war on unarmed nations. We had a terrorist attack that brought down, a New York City landmark, iconic building, a year into his presidency, not even. I didn't think I could be as exhausted as when W was. But I was wrong. Told you, I will tell you when I'm wrong. I was wrong. This is unbelievable. All right, so here's some of the news that's breaking. Looks like Mueller, for the very first time in the Russia investigation, has used the power of the grand jury subpoena, the subpoena power, to subpoena the first inside the Trump circle person, and that will be Steve Bannon. And what's really interesting is that Steve Bannon is currently testifying in front of the House Intelligence Committee, and we're finding out today, late breaking news, that the subpoena to appear before the grand jury went to Steve Bannon last week, which means he knows, but maybe the House Intelligence Committee didn't know. Now, since this news broke, the House Intelligence Committee has taken a break because they were in a secure room with no cell phones, etc. So they probably did not know that Bannon had already been subpoenaed to the grand jury by Mueller. So they were asking him questions that probably, they wanted to know the answers to, and not looking for, disinformation, misinformation, or knowing that he had been subpoenaed by Mueller to the grand jury, meaning Bannon's got to tell the same story to the House Intelligence Committee as he now does to the grand jury or to Mueller's investigators, or else Bannon will be guilty of perjury or lying to federal authorities. So, Bannon is probably sitting in the Senate, in the House Intelligence Committee today, spitting out his guts about how Junior did have this treasonous meeting, and it's true, and Junior, as he knows, was in touch with WikiLeaks the whole time, and Junior, and Jared and him got hacked information from the Russians and then gave it to Cambridge Analytica and the whole data operation. And I mean, so this is unbelievable to me. This is really unbelievable to me that Bannon has a subpoena to appear before the grand jury, and he's testifying right now to the House Intelligence Committee, and he's been there all day. And Bannon knows what Flynn knows, and Flynn obviously has flipped and made a deal with Mueller. So depending on what Flynn is telling Mueller, see, this is something the House Intelligence Committee doesn't know. They don't know what Mueller knows. They don't know what Flynn told Mueller, right? And it better match what Bannon's telling the House. It better match. See what I mean? And also about the firing of James Comey and all these other things. Junior in touch with WikiLeaks, Roger Stone in touch with WikiLeaks, Facebook and the fake news effort, and whether or not they, used they knew that WikiLeaks was going to disseminate this information on a certain day, and that's why Trump went forward and said, next week I'm going to have dirt on Hillary Clinton right after the meeting. He also knows that, Trump Sr. Wrote the excuse note for Junior on the plane. Bannon was there. Oh, this is so good. So that's like as sunny as it's going to get today. Okay. Also this morning, this Department of Homeland Security person who replaced John Kelly as Department of Homeland Security Secretary, because John Kelly was summoned to the White House to take the place of Reince Priebus, who has also talked to Mueller. Interesting. But so Kelly came from DHS, and Kelly is now in the White House. There is a complete story in the Washington Post today where the Washington Post reporters have spoken to 12 White House officials, 12 senior aides to Congress members, lawmakers, and 12 Capitol Hill aides. And they have finally gotten the story about what happened in that meeting on Thursday last week at the White House. And you'll remember Tuesday last week, today is like the anniversary of Trump saying he'll sign whatever they put in front of him. He'll take the heat. Hey, let's do comprehensive immigration reform. Translation, let's legalize 11 million people in this country and give them a permanent solution and get on with it. That is what Trump said last Tuesday, a week ago today.
No, I think it's changed. I think my positions are going to be what the people in this room come up with. I am very much reliant on the people in this room. I know most of the people on both sides. I have a lot of respect for the people on both sides. And what I approve is going to be very much reliant on what the people in this room come to me with. I have great confidence in the people. If they come to me with things that I'm not in love with, I'm going to do it because I respect them.
Okay, so if they come to him with things that he doesn't love, he's going to do it because he respects them. This is apparently what Lindsey Graham is wondering. Lindsey Graham is wondering what happened to Tuesday Trump on Thursday. Where did he go? And Lindsey Graham has a suspicion that John Kelly, who was formerly at DHS, which is why we bring this up, is now the White House chief of staff. And John Kelly told the president, this deal, this signing anything they put in front of you deal, this let's make a deal on comprehensive immigration reform, this thing about DACA, let's do a clean DACA bill, whatever. Remember Dianne Feinstein? Remember this?
And I don't know how you would feel about this, but I'd like to ask the question, what about a clean DACA bill now, and with a commitment that we go into a comprehensive immigration reform procedure like we did back, I remember when Kennedy was here, and it was really a major effort, and it was a great disappointment that it went nowhere.
I have no problem. I think that's basically what Dick is saying. We're going to come out with DACA. We're going to do DACA, and then we can start immediately on the phase 2, which would be comprehensive.
Would you be agreeable to that?
Yeah, I would like to do that.
Yeah, I would like that.
I think a lot of people would like to see that. But I think we have to do DACA first.
Mr. President, you need to be clear, though. I think what Senator Feinstein's asking here, when we talk about just DACA, we don't want to be back here 2 years later. You have to have security, as the Secretary would tell you.
But I think that's what she's saying. I think
I think she's saying
No. That's where it starts to go south. But then he regroups and he says, look, you guys, you just get in a room and whatever you come up with, I'll sign it and I will take the heat. I will cover for both of you. I will cover for the Democrats. I will cover for the Republican. I gotcha.
I do have people that are, let's just to use a very common term, very far right and very far left. They're very unhappy about what we're doing, but I really don't believe they have to be, because I really think this sells itself. And when you talk about comprehensive immigration reform, which is where I would like to get to eventually, if we do the right bill here, we are not very far away. We've done most of it. If you want to know the truth, Dick, if we do this properly, DACA, you're not so far away from comprehensive immigration reform. And if you want to take it that further step, I'll take the heat. I don't care. I'll take all the heat you want to give me. And I'll take the heat off both the Democrats and the Republicans. My whole life has been heat. I like heat.
So today was the hearing where the Department of Homeland Security replacement for John Kelly, Kristen Nielsen, was called to testify. Then this was scheduled. This was a routine, oversight hearing. This was, something that all the agencies, they have oversight. Congress performs their oversight duties, and they question the secretaries of these agencies, routinely. And today was the pre-scheduled oversight hearing for the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristen Nielsen. And of course, everybody wanted to know. She was in this meeting. She was in the Tuesday meeting, but she was also in the Thursday meeting, where the president either said whole or house, referring to African nations, saying take them out as far as Haitians, and changed his whole tune about taking the heat or doing comprehensive or doing DACA or anything. He had completely done a 180. So Lindsey Graham wanted to know from her, what the hell happened to the president between Tuesday and Thursday?
Now, let's talk about two Trumps, the Tuesday Trump and the Thursday Trump. Whose idea was it to do the meeting on Tuesday?
As far as I know, it was the president's.
I will say something that some people may not like, but I thought he did a really good job. He talked about comprehensive immigration reform. Do you remember that from Tuesday?
I do remember that being raised,
Is he still supportive of comprehensive immigration reform?
I believe what he made clear is he's happy to listen to proposals and have the discussion, but there are some immediate needs.
That is not what he said.
I agree with that,
Yes,
but
sir.
he said he wanted to do comprehensive.
Yes. He said he was open to it, absolutely. Yes, sir.
I think he said he wanted to.
Yes.
Do you remember him saying we need to be bipartisan when it comes to immigration reform?
Very important.
Okay, and he still believes that.
Yes.
Do you remember him saying the word love?
I don't remember him saying the word love. I remember him saying care. I've heard him use love before, compassion.
Well, we'll get the tape. He said love. We should do this with love. Are you aware that the Senator Durbin and the president talked at 10 o'clock around that time Thursday morning?
Only through news reporting after the fact.
Okay. Are you aware of the fact that Dick Durbin called me and said, I had the best conversation ever with the president? We should follow up on it.
I am now.
Okay, so is everybody else. Are you aware of the fact that I said, great, Dick, I'll call the White House and see if we can set up a meeting? You are now.
Yes, sir.
So what happened between 10 and 12?
Yeah.
I don't know, since I didn't know
I don't
any of
either.
that.
And I'm going to find out, and I'm not going to ask you, because between 10 o'clock and 12 o'clock, we went from having conversations between Senator Durbin, which I believe every word, and the president that was very hopeful. And by the time we got there, something had happened.
Something had happened. Now, after the hearing, there's much more you have to hear. What is important in that is that something happened between 10 and 12 o'clock on Thursday. Tuesday, we saw the president say he will sign anything Anything that these guys put together because he respects them, anything at all, he will take the heat for whatever he knows he has people from the far right and he doesn't care because he thinks this sells itself. He wants to do he didn't say he would listen to a conversation. He said he'd sign anything, and he was, if you do DACA first, right? DACA first, and then you're almost to comprehensive, which you could see Steny Hoyer in that clip shaking his head going, I have no idea what he thinks comprehensive is. It means giving legalization to 11 million people. That would be amnesty. That would be comprehensive. And he says that he's for that. And then Lindsey Graham asked her today, what the hell happened? What happened between not just Tuesday and Thursday, but Thursday morning, Dick Durbin apparently had a phone call with the President of the United States ahead of the meeting on Thursday in the Oval Office or Roosevelt Room. And he said to him, I just had the best meeting. Lindsey, let's go, let's go, let's go. We can make a deal today. And they all went up to the White House, and he says something happened. Okay. After the hearing, Lindsey Graham, talked to the press. He thinks he knows what happened.
I will say I don't think the president was well served by his staff. I think the president's that we saw Tuesday is that Donald Trump exists, and somehow by 12 o'clock on Thursday something happened, and I don't think he was well served by his staff, but he's responsible for the way he conducts himself, and so am I. Can't blame that on the staff, but I do believe his staff was
would that be General Kelly?
Pretty much missed the mark here. I think General Kelly's a fine man, but he's also part of the staff. So now where do we go?
General Kelly, formerly of the Department of Homeland Security, where one Kirstjen Nielsen is now the secretary. Isn't that fascinating? But it's more than General Kelly. And General Kelly, for all intents and purposes, is now making presidential decisions. That's really fascinating. But there's more, because there's a full story in the Washington Post about what happened between 10 and 12 on Thursday. Who got to the president? General Kelly is one of the people mentioned in this Washington Post article that relied on 12 people, 12 sources to describe what happened between Tuesday, well, not just Tuesday and Thursday, but between Thursday morning at 10 o'clock, where everything was hunky-dory, to Thursday at noon, where everything had tanked to the point of saying, shithole.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandiRhodes.com.
Hello, Progressive Voices tune-in listeners. I'm Casey Hobbs.
And I'm Shane Mason, and we're the hosts of Nurse Talk Radio.
Here's what we're talking about this week.
On the heels of Senate Republicans jamming through a historically unpopular tax bill that enriches their wealthy donors at the American people's expense, the tax giveaway to the wealthy triggered a $400 billion in automatic cuts to Medicare in the next decade. Republicans have already announced their intentions to continue their attack on Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security in 2018.
Shane, that's the really bad news. But the good news is we have President of Social Security Works, Nancy Altman, with us to talk about all of this.
Before we get started, we'd like to play just a short clip of Paul Ryan explaining what he says entitlement reform is.
Sure.
By 2026, according to CBO, roughly all revenues coming to the federal government will be dedicated to interest on the debt, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. And that means everything else is borrowed money. It's a function of the aging of America, health inflation. And so if you do not tackle the drivers of our debt, which are entitlements, you cannot balance the budget in the future and pay down the debt. You cannot tackle the debt crisis that's coming in America if you do not fix this entitlement problem.
It is just outrageous.
It is.
This from a man who just pushed through $1.5 trillion in additional deficit to give tax breaks to the very wealthiest and the largest corporations. The truth is, this is just an old talking point of the Republicans. The truth is that Social Security does not add a penny to the deficit. It is totally self-financed. It has no borrowing authority. Medicare and Medicaid are much more cost-effective than private health insurance, even though Medicare covers the most expensive parts of our population, seniors and people with disabilities, people who have the highest medical costs. It has the lowest per capita administrative costs. Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security are not the issues. We should be expanding Medicare so it's Medicare for all. If we had the same per capita cost, healthcare cost of any other country in the world, anyone, we would have surpluses in the future. So the problems, they like to demonize Social Security as well as Medicare and Medicaid, but those programs are solutions. They are not problems.
The word entitlement is so wrong. We pay into that.
It's so outrageous. These are earned benefits. We are being sold a bill of goods. We are the wealthiest country in the world, and if we want an expanded Social Security and expanded Medicare, it means holding our politicians' feet to the fire, ask them if they're willing to expand these programs or not, and vote for people who will expand them.
Check out our show at nursetalksite.com and listen every Saturday and Sunday right here on Progressive Voices.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
What do you remember the president saying about immigration from African countries to the United States?
What I heard him saying was that he'd like to move away from a country-based quota system to a merit-based system. So it shouldn't matter where you're from. It should matter what you can contribute to the United States.
How did he characterize those countries in Africa?
I don't specifically remember a categorization of countries in Africa. I think what he was saying is, as far as best I could tell, and as you know, there were about a dozen people in the room. There were a lot of cross conversations. There was a lot of rough talk by a lot of people in the room. But what I understood him to be saying is, let's move away from the countries and let's look at the individual and make sure that those we bring here can contribute to our society.
Do you remember the president saying expressly, I want more Europeans? Why can't we have more immigrants from Norway?
I do remember him asking about the concept of underrepresented countries as a fix. This was in the conversation about removing the diversity lottery and how we could reallocate that.
What did the president say about immigrants from Norway?
I heard him repeating what he had learned in a meeting before, that they are industrious, that they are a hardworking country. They don't have much crime there. They don't have much debt. I think in general, I just heard him giving compliments to Norway.
You said on Fox News that the president used strong language. What was that strong language?
Let's see. Strong language, there was... apologies, I don't remember specific word.
Oh, this girl does not remember jack crap, does she? She doesn't remember anything, and that's what's so interesting with Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham asked her, do you remember him using the word love? No, I don't. Everybody remember. It was on the TV. He said he wanted a bill of love on Tuesday. On Tuesday, he was saying, I'll sign anything. I'll take the heat. Let's do DACA first. Everything's cool. I'll take the cover for you guys. I know you got people on the hard right and hard left. And Thursday morning, Durbin calls up the president to say, we've got a proposal for you. We want to bring it up. Yeah, come on over to White House. That's 10 o'clock in the morning. By noon, the president is calling African nations crap holes and saying that he wants Haitians out of this country and that he's not ready to do a DACA deal at all. So everybody's like, what the hell happened? And she doesn't remember any of these words being used. This is so bizarre. She is such a Kool-Aid drinker. It's unreal. Listen to this. This is crazy.
Did you hear me use profanity?
No, sir. Neither did I.
Did you hear Senator Graham use profanity?
I did hear tough language from Senator Graham. Yes, sir.
What did he say?
He used tough language. He was impassioned. I think he was feeling very strongly about the issue, as was everyone in the room. And to underscore a point,
I just want to tell you this whole thing about impassioned and strong language and tough language. You could see the lawyer with the little white pad behind her. These are the words that he told her to use when answering these questions, which is why she repeats them all freaking morning long. Tough language and crosstalk, and I didn't hear, and I don't know, and So Dick Durbin says, well, you're saying everybody used this horrible language. Did you hear me? No. Did you hear Senator Graham? Yeah, I heard Senator Graham. He used tough language. He was very impassioned. Listen to this. The tough language that Lindsey Graham used was not original language. It's.
I think he was using some strong language.
Do you recall that the strong language he used repeated exactly what the president had said prior to that?
I remember specific cuss words being used by a variety of members.
She's drunk the Kool-Aid. This is like this is not. She's never going to tell the truth. So she hedged is what she did, and whether or not you couldn't hold her to perjury, but you could say that she heard everything, and she doesn't want to say what she heard. But here's what the Washington Post says what happened. Okay, they said that Dick Durbin did call the president on Thursday morning. It was 10:15 in the morning last Thursday, and the president expressed pleasure with Dick Durbin's outline on the phone of a bipartisan immigration deal, and Trump was effusive in praising Dick Durbin's efforts. This is according to congressional aides, and just so you know, how does everybody know? When you talk to a member of Congress or the president of the United States, you are not alone on the phone. Okay, I have interviewed more members of Congress, senators, House members. You're never alone on the phone. When you're listening into any interview that I was doing or I do with any House member, except for, when they're in studio. But when they're in studio, the staffer is just behind the member. Just behind the member. A Congress member, a senator is never alone on the phone. A president of the United States is never alone in his office doing official business. There are always people in the Oval Office taking notes. There are always people on the phone listening in to any conversations, and that is how White House staffers and congressional aides can either confirm or deny what was said on a 10:15 phone call Thursday morning. All right? Just so you're clear about how all this works. So that happened at 10:15, and the president is praising Dick Durbin, saying, what a great job. This is great. You and Lindsey did such a good job. Come on over to the White House. He asked, after Dick Durbin laid out the plan, he wanted to make sure, and he said, is Lindsey Graham on board? And Durbin said, yes, he's on board. And so he said, well, why don't you, this is the president, why don't you come to the White House at noon? People on the call told the Washington Post. The president then at 10:15, he's like, this is great. Lindsey agrees. Yes, Lindsey agrees. All right, come to the White House at noon. When they got to the White House, which is something that we told you because we were reading it in the newspaper, when they got to the White House, they were invited into the Oval Office, and Lindsey Graham and Dick Durbin see, and they're surprised, that Trump is far from ready to finalize any agreement. He's angry. He's fired up, according to the staffers. He's just in a mood. He's beyond belief because two people are there that Durbin and Lindsey Graham did not expect to see there, and that was the hardliners, Tom Cotton, the senator from Arkansas, and David Perdue from Georgia. And they have all been up in President Trump's grill, having heard from the staffers that the president was about to make the deal with Lindsey Graham and Dick Durbin. And what was that deal? It was the deal that I told you, Aguilera and the one from Texas, heard the House members had put together that could pass the House. They thought it could pass the House because Hurd's got 800 miles of border in his district in Texas. He's Republican. And Aguilera is the House Hispanic Caucus representative. And the two of them agreed. And what they decided to do, and this is what they offered to Trump on the phone, was instead, Trump wanted to do DACA. He said he wanted to do DACA, and he was willing to do 700,000 DACA kids, who are all ages. And that he was willing to do a clean DACA bill, and then all of a sudden you had, idiot boy over there saying, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. You need your money for the wall. You need your money for the wall. And so they said to Trump in the meeting on Tuesday, all right, we know you hate the visa lottery. We know that you hate that. So why don't we take some of those lottery visas and give the visas to people who have already been here, living here for 10 years, like Haitians who came after the earthquake, and Salvadorans who are fleeing violence and also came after an earthquake. Instead of doing a lottery, we'll give a portion of those visas to them. And the president was like, that's a great idea. Come on up to the White House. When they got there, and Perdue was there, and Cotton was there, and Kelly was there, Trump now said, I'm not interested. I'm not interested in the bipartisan deal that you put together. So they started making suggestions to him about, other things that they could put in or other things that they could do, right? And instead, he started saying, I don't want Haitians, get them out. That's when he called, he called the whole continent of Africa. He doesn't realize Africa is a continent and not, a country. But that's when he said, Africa was a shithole country. And then he started saying, I want the Haitians out of here. And he got so angry. They said that the meeting was short, it was tense, and it was dominated by loud crosstalk and swearing, and that he was ping-ponging back and forth, between interested parties, and that he had gone from being super happy at 10:15 to absolute rage when they walked in. And what happened was the Goodlatte, Bob Goodlatte from Virginia, and the House Freedom Caucus, Mark Meadows, and the senators Perdue and the senator what's his face? Who did I just say? I'm so like Tom Cotton from Arkansas. They all got to the president, and because the president reacts to the last person in the room, Kelly in this article, Kelly is quoted by people who were in the room. Saying that this would not play well with his base. His base, 31% approval this guy's got. He's worried about keeping the 31% cobbled together. 86% of America wants immigration reform. 86% of us are for making the DACA kids, giving them a path to citizenship and giving them their work permits. Even a judge last week ruled that you can't stop allowing them to apply for renewals on their work permits. So and then Durbin, said, he said we'll adjust the visa lottery and we'll give those. The visas to these people who have temporary status here, and will normalize them, and so they don't have to. And he just and so some people brought up the Congressional Black Caucus, and at one point Dick Durbin told the president that members of the Congressional Black Caucus, who are very influential in the House, as you know, would be more likely to agree to the deal if they included people from African nations, people from Haiti. And Trump actually said, quote, you got to be joking. I don't care about their demands. And and John Kelly was in the room. And when Trump said the word shithole countries, and when he said Haitians should not be part of any deal and he wants them out, Graham repeated the language back to the president and said, you should use different language to discuss immigration, Mr. President. And Goodlatte told Graham and Durbin, this proposal is not going to fly. I have a bill. It's much more conservative, and this is the bill I want. And after they left, Graham told his colleagues that he was very disturbed by what he heard in the Oval Office, and that it was evident that the people who were antagonistic to any immigration had gotten to Trump. It's what Lindsey Graham said, that they had gotten to Trump, and that they were stunned that the other lawmakers who were present, that his tone was so different from 10:15 in the morning until noon, and especially from Tuesday where he said he'd sign anything. Mark Meadows was in there. He was agitating for the president to say no and to turn down the deal and not to make the deal and blah, 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 and this and that. Meanwhile, today, they asked, this woman who had a chance to tell the truth about the language and to tell the truth about what went on in that meeting and to tell the truth about who was there and to tell the truth about how the president had been gotten to by Goodlatte, by her former boss, John Kelly, by Mark Short, who is, a legislative liaison for Donald Trump, and how this guy, Mark Short, had been on the phone making calls to lawmakers after Stephen Miller, that racist, had told Mark Short and Kelly had told Miller and Goodlatte had told Trump, you better not do this because you'll lose your base. Mark Short started getting on the phone and he was calling all these House members. He was calling the Freedom Caucus. He was calling Goodlatte. He was calling Mark Meadows. He was calling Tom Cotton from Arkansas. He was calling Perdue from Georgia. That's how they all found out, because the legislative liaison to the president of the United States was calling all these Congress members, telling him, you better come to the White House. You better come because Durbin and Graham are on their way up here and he's going to sign a damn deal. You need to stop him. And that's what happened. So they all headed over to the White House. They were not invited to this meeting by Trump. They were not invited to this meeting by Durbin or by Senator Lindsey Graham. They were invited to this meeting by a guy named Mark Short, who is a legislative aide to the president, works for John Kelly. And he got on the phone and said, you better get up here. You better get up here. And so that when Durbin and Lindsey Graham came to make the deal, the whole freaking Oval Office is full of Freedom Caucus members and hard righters. And that's exactly what Trump said. He goes, I know you got people on the hard right and the hard left. And you know what? They're wrong. I'll take the heat. This sells itself. I will do it. And that was broadcast on the TV, not in a newspaper. Kelly talked to Trump and he told him that this deal is not good for him and that he would lose his base.
To speak to Randi, call now, you bastards. 561-270-3844.
Hello.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force.
Smoke 'em if you got 'em. Yes, it's Herky Jerky in 2018. And for 2018, they're starting off with $5 off full packs of delicious beef smokies. Since Herky Jerky started in 1992, Herky Jerky's delicious beef smokies have been one of the most popular items, and for very good reason. The 100% beef meat sticks have just the right amount of snap on the outside and flavor on the inside. They're low cholesterol, high protein, guaranteed fresh, and the perfect snack for any occasion. This month, they're ringing in the new year with a discount of $5 off all full packs of their 3 kinds of smokies, mild, honey, and jalapeno. The full packs are 1.5 pounds. They include 30 long sticks. The discount applies to full packs only, but as always, if you buy any 2 packs of their products, you'll get free shipping. We hope everybody had a fun and safe holiday season, and we look forward to you enjoying Herky Jerky in 2018 with the absolute best and most delicious jerky anywhere in the world. Visit herkyjerky.com now. Again, herkyjerky.com, enter promo code SMOKY.
So let's see. There's still no female president. You make half of what men make, yet somehow you are still expected to take care of most everything at the home too. And ladies, you're beautiful. But on a daily basis, you look in the mirror in disgust at how you look. It is time to start a new routine, and I hope that you will listen to my new show, She Persisted, here on the Progressive Voices Network. My name is Melissa Carter. I will be your host, and I have been a media personality for over 20 years. I also came out on the air long before Ellen did, and as a single mom and a kidney transplant recipient, I have been through some shit. Nevertheless, I persisted, and I know you have too. So let's talk about what we've accomplished, and together we can learn to take it from She Persisted to She Thrived. It's She Persisted at 8 a.m. on the East on the Progressive Voices Network and on demand on the Progressive Voices app. I certainly hope you'll join me.
Whether you're listening to me, Mark Levine, each Monday and Wednesday,
or me, Leslie Marshall, each Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday,
you can hear us 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Progressive Voices Network.
Here's a sample of what you'll hear. Scott and Paul Scott is president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, the AAM. We're in the new year, and now shouldn't our president and shouldn't Democrats and Republicans be prioritizing and discussing infrastructure?
It's an issue that has always had bipartisan support, so it does bring people together. And it's something that the president talked about for a very long time, and I am not holding my breath that this Congress and president will be able to come to some agreement and will aggressively push an infrastructure plan that America needs and could benefit from. And I think that that's a shame.
Again, that's Mark Levine every Monday and Wednesday.
And Leslie Marshall each Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday.
3 to 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Progressive Voices Network.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Did you hear me use profanity?
No, sir. Neither did I.
Did you hear Senator Graham use profanity?
I did hear tough language from Senator Graham. Yes, sir.
What did he say?
He used tough language. He was impassioned. I think he was feeling very strongly about the issue, as was everyone in the room. And to underscore a point, I think he was using some strong language.
Do you recall that the strong language he used repeated exactly what the president had said prior to that?
I remember specific cuss words being used by a variety of members.
Here's Cory Booker.
The commander-in-chief, in an Oval Office meeting, referring to people from African countries and Haitians with the most vile and vulgar language. The language festers. When ignorance and bigotry is allied with power, it is a dangerous force in our country. Your silence and your amnesia is complicity. Right now in our nation, we have a problem. I don't know if 73% of your time is spent on white supremacist hate groups. I don't know if 73% of your time is spent concerned about the people in fear in communities in this country, Sikh Americans, Muslim Americans, Black Americans. The fact pattern is clear of the threats in this country. I hurt. When Dick Durbin called me, I had tears of rage when I heard about his experience in that meeting. And for you not to feel that hurt and that pain and to dismiss some of the questions of my colleagues, saying I've already answered that line of questions when tens of millions of Americans are hurting right now because of what they're worried about what happened in the White House. That's unacceptable to me. There are threats in this country. People plotting. I receive enough death threats to know the reality. Kamala receives enough death threats to know the reality. Maisie receives enough death threats to know the reality. And I've got a president of the United States whose office I respect, who talks about the countries of origins of my fellow citizens in the most despicable of manner. You don't remember. You can't remember the words of your commander-in-chief. I find that unacceptable. Mr. Chairman, I'm grateful to be on this committee. I'm more than ever today happy I am here.
Wow. Yeah. That's kind of, what you want to say to her. Thank God Cory Booker said it to her. Seriously, dude, something happened to the president between 10 and noon where he invites Dick Durbin and he invites Lindsey Graham over to make a deal. And, all of a sudden the White House liaison for the legislative branch is on the phone at the behest of John Kelly. John Kelly, late in the morning. So here's the timeline. You always want to make a timeline. 10:15, Durbin calls the president. He says, we got a bipartisan deal. We can do this. We were so encouraged after your Tuesday Roosevelt Room thing where you invited the cameras in and you said that you wanted to do a DACA deal. We've got border security money for you. We've got some great ideas here on paper. And he says, is Lindsey on board? Durbin says, yes, Lindsey is on board. Well, come on up to the White House. Meet me here at noon. And Kelly hears that the president is going to be hosting Durbin and Lindsey Graham at noon. And he panics and he starts telling the legislative aides, like a guy named Mark Short and Stephen Stephen Miller, that racist Bannonite, that the president's going to make a deal. The president's going to make a deal. Oh my God, he's going to normalize all these DACA kids. He's going to do, this is not good for the president's base. Get on the phone, start calling the hardliners, call the Freedom Caucus. And that's exactly what they did. Mark Short is the name of the person who began to make the calls to the lawmakers, and he was sharing Kelly and Miller's concerns. And Goodlatte, who is super conservative, he goes to the White House. He heads to the White House. He calls the House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy. He says, go to the White House. Senators David Perdue and Senators Tom Cotton, they were called and they were told, rush over to the White House. This is what's in the newspaper today. Rush over. These are not my words. These are the words of the people who were on the phone. These are the words of the people who work in the White House. And these are the words of the people who are on the legislative staffs of these legislators. Okay. So then late in the morning, Durbin and Graham get to this meeting, and Kelly, who'd already, been in the room, he talked to Trump and he told Trump the proposal is not good for your agenda. Not good. This is the former Secretary of Homeland Security. Not good for you. And people in the White House say John Kelly has taken an aggressive and influential role in the immigration negotiations. He's been calling lawmakers. He's been meeting with White House aides every single day. And he's doing it on immigration more than he's done it on any other topic. Not terrorism, not hacking in an election year that's coming up, where we just got reports from cybersecurity experts inside the United States saying that the Senate is being hacked by the same fancy bear group. No, nothing. He's not interested in any of this homeland security stuff. Only the immigration thing. He has, quote, according to the Washington Post and the people they spoke to, he has very strong feelings. This is in the words of one official. This is a quote. He has very strong feelings. He is much more involved on immigration than he's been on any other topic. And he's not the lone voice. Mark Meadows of North Carolina. Kelly is determined to secure a deal on Dreamers and border security, but told Trump that the southwestern border is worse than it was. It's worse than it was. And you have to do something about that. He said, Mark Krikorian, who is a hardliner on immigration, he said, once we saw what was going on in the meeting a few days earlier, we were freaked out, meaning when he was watching TV, the way we were watching TV on Tuesday, and he saw the president say, I'll take the heat. I know you got people on the far right.
I do have people that are, let's just to use a very common term, very far right and very far left. They're very unhappy about what we're doing, but I really don't believe they have to be, because I really think this sells itself. And when you talk about comprehensive immigration reform, which is where I would like to get to eventually, if we do the right bill here, we are not very far away. We've done most of it. If you want to know the truth, Dick, if we do this properly, DACA, you're not so far away from comprehensive immigration reform. And if you want to take it that further step, I'll take the heat. I don't care.
Yeah, you could see Steny Hoyer just, like he doesn't know what he's talking about, but that's okay. All right. So they watched that on TV and they said, quote, once we saw what was going on in the meeting a few days earlier, we were freaked out, said Mark Krikorian, who runs the Center for Immigration Studies, which is a fact-free study center, okay, that provides Fox News with their talking points. He said, quote, Trump has a hawkish instinct on immigration, but they're not well developed. He hasn't been through these kinds of legislative fights. He doesn't know what he's doing. And so by the time Durbin got with Lindsey Graham, the whole Oval Office is full of these crazy people that he said he knew were there and were upset, but he would take the heat from. All of a sudden, he's not willing to take the heat. And he says to Durbin and Lindsey Graham, this is a terrible deal for me. This is a terrible deal for me. Kelly is correct. I need to back away. Mark Meadows said, it wasn't a serious proposal. It was not viewed as a serious proposal because it did so little to address the immigration issues that the president has been vocal about. It was, if I had to put it in a 1 to 10 range, with 10 being the most conservative and 1 being the most liberal, I would give this proposal a 2.5. Now, as far as the S-hole or S-house debate is, who cares what he said? Who cares? But he said he wasn't. Trump said he's not really upset about the coverage of the meeting. The Washington Post reports that he was calling his friends and he was asking, how does it play with the political base? How does it play with the base? Quote, everyone was saying it would help with the base. But by Thursday night, the White House aides were concerned that the story was exploding beyond the usual level for a Trump controversy. And there was a bye-bye dinner for the Deputy National Security Advisor, Dina Powell. She quit. So there was a party. Dina Powell, she came from Goldman Sachs. She was picked to be our Deputy National Security Advisor underneath Michael Flynn. Yeah, by Jared and Ivanka. And they were having a going away party for her at Cafe Milano in Georgetown. And there was no effort at this party to push back on anything that Trump had said with regard to I want these Haitians out of here and the S-house remark or the S-hole remark because, everybody in the dinner, everybody who was at the White House, everybody who was in that meeting knew he had said it. And they all said, well, we know he said it and he's not so upset about it. So, let's not push back against it. But then Friday morning, Trump woke up and somebody must have gotten to him because that's when he sent out the tweet that said he didn't say S-hole or S-house. He didn't say it. He said the language used by me at the DACA meeting was tough. See how everybody's adopted the tough? Yeah, it was tough language, but that was not the language used. And on the Sunday shows, Senators Cotton and Perdue went out there and told the media that the S-hole was a mischaracterization of what Trump said. It was, a complete mischaracterization is what they said. But now their memories have evolved. And they said, oh, well, it wasn't hole, it was house. And this is what they're standing on to deny that he said hole. Because he didn't say shithole, he said shit house. This is their defense. And that's what Dick Durbin was sitting there going, I cannot believe that this is their defense.
What did the president say? What did you hear him say?
He said many things. It went on for probably half an hour. The most outrageous comment, obviously, is in reference to countries overseas that might send immigrants to the United States, and the president used the vulgar term, which has been repeated over and over again. But it was a long, far-ranging meeting about immigration in general. Negative things were said about Haitians coming to the United States. The president was talking, and I think this is a tell, if you will. We need more people from Norway, he said. Norway, they don't even take refugees in Norway, he said. And I just met with the Norwegian Prime Minister. We need more Europeans. It was pretty clear to me what the president's message was in that meeting.
And just to clear it up, when he said S-hole countries, he was referring to Africa?
Yes.
Now, Senators Cotton and Perdue have challenged the notion that he said S-hole. And I believe there's some reporting out there that White House officials say that Perdue and Cotton think that he said S-house countries as opposed to S-hole countries.
Let me say they're wrong. I can tell you explicitly they are wrong. And let me also say, is that their defense? That S-house is acceptable, S-hole, he would never say? Come on. To think that the President of the United States would refer to any country on earth as an S-house country, for goodness sakes, what does that say?
And that's their defense, that it wasn't hole, it was house. Really? This is his bill of love. This is his bill of love. No, you have a president who can be gotten to by the last person he speaks to and have his mind completely changed on issues that affect over 1 million people in this country. 700,000, 800,000 dreamers, 200,000 Salvadorans who have temporary protected status, and 55,000 Haitians. And the president was willing and able to tell them, go ahead, take the vote. I'll sign it. I'll cover for you. I know you got people from the far right, far left. I will take the heat. I will take the heat. And as soon as they show up in the Oval Office, he calls everybody and every person who would be covered garbage.
For a commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience, visit RandiRhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.
Now, the top of the hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn presents the Green News Report.
It's our worst fear coming to life for us right now.
Record rain and deadly mudslides hit California in the wake of record wildfires. Trump administration reverses expansion of offshore drilling, but only for Florida. Plus,
today, New York City is ending that decades-long pattern of deception and denial by holding these fossil fuel companies to account.
New York City sues the oil industry for climate change damages and will divest from fossil fuels.
All of that divestiture and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
These companies knew as far back as at least the 80s and perhaps earlier that burning fossil fuels would have ruinous impacts on the planet's atmosphere and that it would change our climate, exposing the globe to sea level rise, increased heat, and severe storms.
What do you have against disaster capitalism, sir? This is your Green News Report. So, Desiree, not long ago, a lot of us in Southern California were feeling pretty lucky, given the size of the fires out here, the fact that 44 people had been killed in Northern California, but the death rate was much lower down here. Now we have these floods in the wake of that huge fire in Southern California. And it's clear we really weren't lucky at all.
Yes, it's true. In Southern California, rescuers are now racing to find survivors that were trapped by mudslides and flash floods in areas of Santa Barbara County that had been stripped of vegetation just last month in those record wildfires. Torrential rains on Tuesday night, at one point dumping nearly an inch of rain in only 15 minutes, triggered powerful rivers of mud that demolished more than 100 homes while residents slept. At least 17 people are confirmed dead as of airtime. That number is likely to rise. More than a dozen are still missing.
And is it fair to say that had we not had that huge wildfire in the area that was struck by rain, we would not have seen those mud flows and those deaths?
It's very likely. In a press conference, Santa Barbara County Sheriff Bill Brown said the devastation looks like a war zone.
The only words I can really think of to describe what it looked like was it looked like a World War I battlefield. It was literally a carpet of mud and debris everywhere, with huge boulders, downed trees, power lines, wrecked cars.
That same storm system also shattered San Francisco's rainfall record set back in 1872. This storm's destruction comes in the wake of the announcement that 2017 set a record for climate-related extreme weather disasters that cost the United States $306 billion in economic losses.
And frankly, untold numbers of lives. And I gotta say, as far as I know, Donald Trump hasn't said one damn word about what's happened out here in California.
In politics, Trump Interior Secretary Ryan Zinke has reversed a widely condemned proposal to expand offshore drilling, but only for Florida, not any other state. That was after a meeting with Florida's Republican Governor Rick Scott. In a statement, Zinke said, quote, "Florida is unique and its coasts are heavily reliant on tourism as an economic driver."
Yeah, much more unique than those crappy coasts on California, Washington, Oregon, Maine, North Carolina, South Carolina. Who cares about them?
Florida's Democratic Senator Ben Nelson, a longtime opponent of offshore drilling, called the reversal, quote, "a political stunt orchestrated by the Trump administration to help Rick Scott, who is expected to challenge Nelson for the Senate in November."
Trump administration? Political stunts? Not possible.
Democratic and Republican governors of coastal states are also asking to be removed from the offshore drilling expansion, since all of them also have billion-dollar tourism industries that would be harmed by an oil spill. The decision to exempt only Florida in an apparent political favor could also be illegal, violating strict procedures that bar federal agencies from arbitrary and capricious actions, giving ammunition to environmental law groups and states who plan to challenge the administration's offshore drilling. Finally, in a major move, New York City announced on Wednesday it is suing 5 of the world's largest oil companies for damages caused by climate change, and announced that the city's massive pension funds will divest from all fossil fuel investments by 2022. The lawsuit alleges that the oil companies knew that burning their product would cause dangerous global warming and lied about it. Repairs and resilience work to harden infrastructure against extreme weather disasters and rising seas is projected to cost the city more than $20 billion. In a press conference, the city's chief sustainability officer, Dan Zarilli, noted that fossil fuel investments have underperformed the market recently and characterized both moves as an economic imperative.
The impacts of climate change are no longer theoretical. It's not just happening far away. It's here and it's now. We're already spending billions to protect this city, and much more will be needed this century to protect New Yorkers. And that's why the city's lawsuit, filed last night in federal court, is seeking billions in damages to ensure that our city will be ready to withstand these impacts.
The lawsuit is very similar to lawsuits that clawed back billions in damages from the tobacco industry.
Go get them, New York City. For much more on all of those stories and the ones we couldn't get to, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find us, follow us, and share us worldwide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
It's up to you, New York, New York.
Please help Progressive Voices support the Green News Report by stopping by bradblog.com/donate.
Wolf, it's been a contentious hearing that's lasted virtually all day long after Steve Bannon refused to answer questions about his time with the Trump transition after the campaign season, as well as his time in the White House. Now, he is said to have cited that he cannot answer those questions because of executive privilege. It's unclear if he actually asserted executive privilege at the direction of the White House. The White House itself would not say explicitly whether or not they told Steve Bannon not to answer key questions, but today Bannon would not disclose information that the committee was seeking about a range of topics, including what he knows about communications with that the former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn had with the Russian ambassador at the time, Sergei Kislyak, among other issues. It was so contentious, Wolf, that the Republicans and the Democrats on the committee agreed to issue him a subpoena on the spot in the committee to compel him to disclose this information behind closed doors. This is according to a source familiar with the matter. Now, another person who was in the meeting, Tom Rooney, emerged and discussed the issue at play, said that I certainly think that the committee respects executive privilege. It's when does that attach is the question that's sort of dominating the day, and that was several hours ago. And Wolf, as I said, he is still behind closed doors. We do expect this to end soon, and we do expect Congressman Adam Schiff, the top Democrat in the committee, to answer questions as soon as this is done. But he's been in there since 9:30 this morning in what has been a very contentious hearing because of his refusal to answer questions.
Oh, my God. So let's hold Steve Bannon in contempt of Congress. Let's do it. Let's frog march him, everybody. Let's frog march him. Wow. Okay, so here's the situation yesterday that we were monitoring at the beginning of the show. And, of course, it didn't end till after the show ended. I mean, Steve Bannon was in the House Intelligence Committee hearing behind closed doors until 8 o'clock last night. And everybody was wondering, including us during the show, is he still there? We knew going in that Steve Bannon had been issued last week a subpoena to appear either before Bob Mueller's interviewers or at the grand jury. We know that a subpoena was issued. We didn't know whether or not the House Intelligence Committee understood that to be true because they were in a secure location behind closed doors and they didn't have their cell phones. So it turns out that a staffer had gone into the secure room and told them as soon as the story dropped yesterday that Mueller had subpoenaed Bannon. A staffer went into the committee room and told the committee members, Trey Gowdy, Devin Nunes, this lunatic from Florida who's always on the TV, who's just quoted in that report, that, hey, Bannon is under subpoena by Mueller. So whatever he says here, it's got to be the truth, right? Because Mueller's going to interview. And Steve Bannon just shut down. He stopped answering questions. And but within the first 90 minutes of the questioning, Bannon had apparently slipped up because he's such a genius. Yeah, Axios is reporting this morning that within the first 90 minutes of the interrogation of one Steve Bannon, he had slipped up and he had disclosed to the committee conversations that he had with the president while he was chief strategist in the White House. Oh, yeah. So he's waived any privilege that might be due him. Executive privilege during the time he's at the White House, you know, you could see it. You could kind of get that. You can kind of say, okay, but there's no clarification on whether or not the White House has invoked executive privilege. Now, they didn't with Jeff Sessions. And Jeff Sessions also refuses to answer questions in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, right? Citing executive privilege, something that the White House has not invoked on behalf of Jeff Sessions. It's interesting. But all of a sudden yesterday, Steve Bannon realizes that he had gone into discussions about while he was chief strategist in the White House and that he wasn't supposed to talk about that. And so Trey Gowdy, the Republican, started, saying, but you mentioned these conversations you had with the president. You've waived any privilege now. And the lawyer for Bannon told the committee, oh, he's not going to answer any more questions. They then call the White House. Seriously, because Bannon screwed up. They then call the White House, and the White House says, read us the questions that he's being asked, and they do it over the phone. This isn't me. Sarah Huckabee Sanders confirmed this today, which makes me think it makes me think it didn't happen. Because anything this woman said, by the way, Brett thinks she looks hot today. All right.
It's definitely date night in the Huckabee Sanders household tonight.
He thought she was so smoking hot today. But okay, so you have Bannon's lawyer. I know it's sick. It's twisted. He doesn't approve of her once she opens her mouth, but other than that, he thinks she's gorgeous. But Bannon's lawyer, a guy named Bill Burke, calls the White House. And a White House attorney is on the phone, and a White House attorney says, don't let him answer any of these questions after they read the questions to the White House. No one is clear if the White House invoked executive privilege, but I will tell you this. Anything that happened during the transition can't be protected by a claim of executive privilege. You know why? Yes, you do. Because he wasn't the executive yet. And you've got lunatic congressmen telling Manu Raju at CNN, well, certainly there can be a claim of executive privilege. We just don't know when it attaches. How about when he becomes the executive, you moron? How hard is that for you? How difficult? It's like saying, I could practice law before I get a law degree. No, you can't. Does that make any sense to anybody that you would have an executive privilege before you're the executive? It makes no sense to anybody. And Bannon won't answer questions about his time after he left the White House. He is no longer protected by executive privilege because he's not talking to the executive, nor is Bannon protected under executive privilege because he's not an executive. So this is so stupid. So meanwhile, that was the reporting that we had as we were leaving last night, but there was no clarification on what happened. Now we have the TikTok of the whole meeting from 4 people who were in the meeting, and they say that Bannon slipped up, that he did disclose conversations that he was not supposed to discuss because they happened while he was chief strategist. That whoops, everybody. Bannon had one too many. And so the rest of it is that after the hearing started, the New York Times dropped its story about the grand jury subpoena that exists for Bannon that was issued by Mueller, but nobody in the room had their phone, and so nobody knew. But an official walked into the room to inform the committee and Bannon's team of the story. So now the committee understood that Bannon was, he was going to dodge because, and what's crazy is he voluntarily said he would attend this meeting. He was invited by the House Intelligence Committee. He was invited and he said, oh yes, of course I accept your invitation. And then he showed up and refused to answer. Who does that? After he says, when I was chief strategist, I got to tell you, this is what he said. I talked to Reince Priebus. I talked to Sean Spicer. I talked to the legal spokesman for the White House, Mark Carollo, about Don Jr.'s meeting with the Russians in Trump Tower in 2016. And that he was on the plane when, Senior was writing the excuse note for Junior. And he knows that was, a cover-up. At that point, when they found out that Mueller had subpoenaed him, and trust me, Mueller doesn't care about Michael Wolff's book, which is what they're kicking around in the media. No. I'll tell you what Mueller cares about. Mueller cares that Junior was in touch with WikiLeaks. Mueller cares that Trump made up an excuse 3 times for Junior's meeting in Trump Tower in June of 2016. But more importantly, Mueller wants to know about Flynn and how much did Flynn work with Cambridge Analytica, the Mercer's family. He wants to know how well informed he was that Trump Jr. and Roger Stone were talking to WikiLeaks about the document dumps. He wants to know, Bannon, I got to tell you, the thing about Cambridge Analytica, for those of you who need a refresher, Cambridge Analytica was using real-time information to determine which tweets to support with bots and stuff, and to send out, and which messages were resonating, and then they would shape the travel schedule and the messaging of Donald Trump around what was popular on the Twitter, right? And they were also targeting Hillary voters who were on the fence about Hillary, and there's some. Okay, I think that Cambridge was getting targeted information from the Russians hacking of the DNC and the voter files. And what you may not remember, and you should now, is who was the vice president of Cambridge Analytica? Steve Bannon. He was vice president of Cambridge. Who owns Cambridge Analytica? That would be the Mercers. Who supports Breitbart to the tune of $10 million? That would be the Mercers. You see, there's this little circle that keeps on getting rounded. So trust me, this is what Mueller's interested in. So anyway, when the committee yesterday found out that Mueller had subpoenaed. Well, Mueller just hired a cybersecurity expert, right? And so all of a sudden, the cybersecurity expert comes on board, and Mueller says, the cybersecurity expert must be looking at the data, and there must be a connection, that they can see that would support going to the court and asking for a subpoena. And they did get the subpoena. So now the committee knows that. Okay, so at that point, the committee paused, stopped the proceedings, and there was a scramble about how to proceed and how to ensure that everything they were doing wouldn't upset the Mueller probe. Now, the committee informed Mueller's team several days earlier that it was going to call Bannon as a witness, and that Bannon had agreed to appear, and they didn't hear back from Mueller's team, so they thought, okay, it's cool. We got green lighted. So Trey Gowdy was leading the questioning of, for the Republicans. Trey Gowdy, Mr. Pointyhead himself, and he started pressing Bannon hard on his description of Don Jr.'s Trump Tower meeting in the book, in the Michael, because they're so stupid. So Trey's asking him about the stupid book. So Gowdy is asking Bannon whether he would consider it treason for somebody close to him to approach WikiLeaks' Julian Assange to get opposition research on Hillary Clinton, and Bannon replied it would be bad judgment. All of a sudden, Trey Gowdy produces emails from a Cambridge Analytica employee where Bannon was vice president, boasting about contacts with Julian Assange. Whoops. And Bannon says, oh, well, that's the first time I've ever seen these emails, except these emails have been in the news. That's why I'm able to tell you what I'm telling you, right? So Bannon attacked the Republicans. He started attacking Trey Gowdy. He started attacking all the Republicans in the room on the Intel Committee, Devin Nunes, all these people. And he started saying that they were part of an establishment plan that was trying to nullify the election. And Gowdy said, who is this establishment you refer to who's trying to nullify Trump's victory? And he says, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell. He goes, well, what about Kevin McCarthy, the leader of the Republican House Conference? Isn't he part of the cabal? I mean, he's working with Trump, hand in glove. And then he said, what do you mean there was zero chance they didn't bring Don Jr. up to see Trump Sr.? Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.